Welcome back to the Self Mastery Podcast. I'm your host and self-development coach, Ricky Gossi. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about how important it is that we set rules upon our own life and ourself, and the benefit you get from that, and the detriment and hindrance that you experience when you don't have a set of rules or a set of structure that keeps you on the right path. So let's dive straight in and define what rules are and sort of like why we do them, just a general overview. So rules are a form of structure that we impose upon our own life that keeps us from getting drawn into chaos. Rules impose order. Order is the opposition of chaos. So when you have rules, when you have some structure, when you have a bit of order in your life, you're getting away from that chaotic part and, sort of like experience of life, and you're more so getting drawn towards order, structure, and anti-chaos, essentially. Okay? Now, what rules should we set for ourselves? Now, I can't tell you this, because this is a podcast, not a one-on-one coaching session, and I don't know who's listening at the moment. And every single person is going to have a different set of rules. So because everyone has different core values, because everyone has different preferences, because everyone has different desires and fears and, what they want out of their life and what they want out of their self, the rules are going to be different. But understand this, when you are setting your rules, you need to set rules that are going to take you closer to who you want to be and the life you want to live. Your rules are essentially like your guiding principle. Think about the rules that you have for your life as like the steering wheel on your car. Whatever rules you have are going to determine, where you go. So you're going to use these rules as a way to steer yourself towards the life you want. All right. Now, I'm going to list some common rules that I've experienced through just talking to people in day-to-day life, through some rules that some of my clients have had in my one-on-one coaching and in my community. And I'm also going to throw some rules in there that I have personally for my own life. So I'm not going to spend too much time on each rule, but I'm just going to highlight them very quickly. No drinking, no drugs, no porn, no gambling, no gaming, no smoking, no social media, going to bed on time, having sexual discipline, hitting the gym consistently, eating whole, healthy, nutritious foods that aren't full of processed bullshit, drinking the highest quality of water, not spending time with negative people who draw you down, not engaging in people who talk shit about other people, like not allowing yourself to engage in that negative talk. Looking a certain way, that's like a personal appearance standard, a personal appearance rule. Not allowing yourself to be disrespected by others or yourself, right? So there's so many rules we can apply here. These are just literally off the top of my head that I've, as I said, experienced from other people and also have for my own life. Some of them, not all of them. Now, with this, okay, so after you establish your rules, after you establish what you want for yourself in your life, this is your life, okay? This is no one else's, so you set your own rules. But once you set them, the next step is you do not break them. You hold yourself to keeping these rules going, okay? You don't break your fucking word, you stay integrous. You make sure that you are actually doing what you say you're going to do. So let's say you set the rule for yourself to not eat fast food. Okay, that's your rule. I'm not going to eat fast food anymore. I want to improve my health through nutrition. And then you set that rule for yourself on Monday, and then on Wednesday, you're, elbow deep into a KFC bucket. You've just broken your word. You've broken your rule. And what that does is it wears down your trust for yourself, and it wears down your self-respect, because when we don't trust ourselves, when we continuously betray ourselves, we start to lose a little bit of respect for ourselves, which is a natural byproduct of not living in accordance to the rules we set. Okay, so once you set your rules, once you understand what your rules are, you need to then actually stick to them, which is, the harder part. Anyone can set rules. Like I could sit here and list fucking 200 rules that would improve everyone's life. But whether or not they can stick to those rules is a whole different game. And then, in terms of like how we can actually stick to the rules we set, well, then you start needing to talk about accountability systems, accountability partners. Like accountability is a big part of actually sticking to rules and structure, but that's a whole other podcast episode. We're just going to talk about the rules in this one. So what these rules do are they keep us in alignment with who we want to be, who we want to become, and the life we want to live. So if you have a rule, let's actually start at the start. If you have a desired outcome or a goal that you want to be in the best possible physical condition of your life, you want peak physical health, okay, you're probably going to have some rules around not drinking, not taking drugs, not skipping the gym, not, sleeping 4 hours a night. You probably have a really good rule around sleep discipline, like you need at least 8 hours sleep. Probably going to have a rule there around like the amount of water you need to consume per day, probably like at least 3 liters a day. You're going to have all these rules that are aligned with the desired outcome you want. So start with the desired outcome and then work backwards and say to yourself, okay, well, if I want that, what rules do I need to, impose upon myself to get that desired outcome? And you start to establish then some rules that are going to help you get to that desired outcome. And they're going to literally like steer you towards that outcome. Think of rules as like your steering wheel in your car, kind of, right? So these rules are sort of the things that you can use to steer yourself towards the desired outcome. So if you want to become fit, you should probably create some rules around, fitness and health and like really good physical discipline habits or rules. And if you want to become, let's say, wealthy, then you're probably going to have some rules around that as well, like, saving a portion of your money, investing a portion of your money, investing in yourself, building a business, buying back your time through delegation and hiring others, creating a business or some form of company or some form of service that you provide to society that gives you your freedom. You're going to have these rules. You're going to have these rules that you set for yourself, rules that you must stick to no matter what. And these rules are going to help you massively. One thing I want to talk about too is a lot of people have like a negative relationship to rules, but more importantly, structure. A lot of people are like, fuck, what kind of life are you living if you got to live by all these rules and tick off all these things every day and make sure you're doing all these sort of things? Aren't you just a prisoner of your own systems? It's like, well, what's the alternative? What's the alternative to living a structured life with rules and order? The opposite of that is chaos. It is uncertainty. It is going down a path that you don't even know what the fucking outcome is, but more than likely it's not going to be good. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a fucking structured junkie where like, everything needs to be on a list, right? And you have to go absolutely crazy with it. But what I am saying is you should, at the bare minimum, have some rules for your life and know what they are. Like review them regularly as well. You can't just make these rules and fucking sort of forget about them and then just never approach them again. You should probably be reading these rules every day, especially if there's only like 10 or so of them. Read them every day. It'll take you literally less than 15 seconds. And you remind yourself, okay, these are the rules I'm going to live by today. And the reason I'm going to live by these rules today is because it's going to get me to this desired outcome that I want. And that's exactly what I want. So the quote unquote sacrifice that we need to make today in terms of abiding by these rules, doing these certain things and staying away from these certain things is going to get me exactly what I want. Therefore, it's worth it. Therefore, I'm going to do it. Okay. Now, on top of the rules and these guidelines and this structure and this order leading us to who we want to be, it also prevents us from going down a path that we want to avoid and becoming a version of ourselves that we don't want to become. An example of this, let's say your rule is, I want to stay away from porn. Okay, let's say that's a rule you set for yourself. And the reason you've set that rule for yourself is because you don't like who you become and you don't like how you think and you don't like how you operate when you do watch porn. So you know the chaos. The chaos, in a sense, it's a familiar chaos to you. You know the outcome of that. So you set rules to avoid yourself, to prevent yourself from going down that path and leading to that known chaos. So you imply structure upon your own life to take you from that state of chaos to a state of order. And it draws you towards a better version of yourself. And that's just one rule, right? So we're starting to see the power of rules here, how when we impose structure in our life, when we impose a sense of order, we actually gain more power over it. Okay, Jocko Williams has a really good quote that goes, discipline is freedom. Okay, a lot of people look at discipline and structure and order and all this stuff as restrictions. They think, oh, I have to do this stuff. This sucks. I have to do this. That's not the truth. The truth of the matter is, firstly, you get to do this. And by doing this, it gives you your freedom. Okay, think about it. You go to the gym, okay? What freedom does that gain you? That gains you freedom from a lot of injuries. That gains you freedom to move in a healthy and completely able way. It gains you the freedom to look in the mirror and love your body because you've got such an amazing physique. that gains you the ability to have high energy, to have confidence, all these things, right? So like this discipline of training in the gym, this example, is gaining you the freedom of an array of things. Discipline equals freedom. The more that you start to understand that concept and apply it in your own life, the better your life will become. You start to understand that the things that a lot of people are in aversion to, so the things that a lot of people are trying to get away from, like hard things and discipline and stuff like this, you start to realize that these are the things that actually buy you the freedom. The things that you actually want come through the disciplinary acts. Okay, you build a business, right? That takes discipline. Building and maintaining a business definitely takes discipline, but from the acts of that discipline, you reap the rewards of financial freedom. Okay, so you can start to see here how discipline is going to lead to freedom and how rules are going to help you enforce that discipline upon yourself. And another thing too, if you don't set rules for yourself, you're going to have rules set for you, by society, by people who need to fucking govern you because you sort of like aren't governing yourself. You need to set rules for yourself. Like, don't be someone who relies on, like, for example, let's say you're a guy listening to this. Don't be the sort of person who waits for their wife to tell them, hey, I think you should start going to the gym. You're getting a little bit out of shape. That should be something you start doing. Don't wait for your wife to tell you that. Don't put her in that position of, making her embody her masculine energy and having to bring that up with you. Set the rules yourself. Set yourself to the highest standard possible so other people don't need to do that for you. Set your own rules and then fucking stick by them. Super important. Now, what happens when a person doesn't have rules for themselves, right? What tends to happen is they just float through life. And a lot of the time, the driving factors that determine their actions and their behavior and their decisions comes from whatever they feel like, okay? So they're very, hedonistic and, impulsive and drawn into, instant gratification. It's like a very feeling-based sort of, decisions are made from this place. It's like, okay, you wake up and you're like, oh, do I feel like going to the gym? Nah, I'm not going to go to the gym. What do I feel like? I feel like watching Netflix all day. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. And it's like, oh, do I feel like eating a healthy dinner tonight? Nah, let's get KFC. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. Or do I feel like, spending the time and going for a walk? Nah, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to play video games. Yeah. Do I feel like actually communicating with a woman and taking her on a date and doing all this and this and this and forming a connection and building a relationship? Nah, I'm not going to do any of that. Yeah, no, I'm just going to fulfill my human need for intimacy and connection through porn. Yeah, and you can start to see where all this feeling, the decision making coming from feelings, it can very quickly become like a self-destructive path, because if we use feelings as our only guiding principle, then it can very quickly go into hedonism and instant gratification and impulsiveness, because for the most part we are wired to seek out things that feel good and stay away from things that feel bad or are hard. I should say, that's a better way to imply it. So when we're using these feelings as a way to guide our actions and decisions in life, we actually end up fucking destroying everything around us. Because hedonism is a very destructive path to go down. I don't know if you more than likely have, depending on who's listening, but I'm sure you have been down a path of hedonism before, where you make your decisions based off the fact that you just want to feel good and feel happy. You very quickly start to realize that happiness and pleasure specifically, isn't a good guiding principle for decisions, actions, and behavior. It can get destructive and dark very fucking quickly. I've been down that path myself, and I'm so happy that I changed my guiding principle. My guiding principle now is self-respect. That's one of the best ones that I have used, and I still use that to this day. And that is, will I respect myself more or less after I do this thing? And a lot of the time, it's like, well, if it's like training or doing something really good, it's like, yeah, I'm going to respect myself more. But if it's something that I probably shouldn't be doing, like drinking, drugs, gaming, porn, just the fucking vices and bullshit, then I'm not going to do that, because I'm going to respect myself less. So form your rules, but also form your guiding principle. and they're sort of interlinked. So your guiding principle will influence your rules, and your rules will influence your guiding principle. Okay, so as I said, yeah, if you don't have these rules, if you don't have some structure in your life, you're just going to lead towards, allowing your emotions and desires and impulses and cravings to take the reins of your behavior. It can get really dark really quickly. When someone does that, they literally become like a puppet to their internal world, and they have no control over what they do. They literally, like, they might think they have control. They're like, I'm the one making the decision to drink. I'm the one making the decision to do these drugs, to watch this porn, to fucking game for 6 hours straight, to gamble my wage in the poker. He's like, I'm making this decision. It's like, are you really though? Are you really making that decision? Or are the internal driving factors driving you? And, you just have the illusion of control. Like when you really come home and pick up that beer and take a sip of it, are you really deciding to do that? Or is it just a habitual pattern that's formed over years? You're trying to escape your emotions. You're trying to feel good through a way of mood alteration. You're trying to experience some form of dopaminergic hit. Are you really making that decision? Or is the internal world influencing you unconsciously and you're not realizing it? The illusion of control is a very interesting topic. Again, a podcast for another episode, an episode for another podcast. So, guys, really just think about that. Like, understand, you are a puppet to the internal world if you don't have rules. Like, you need to set rules to prevent yourself from being played like a fucking puppet, from being a slave to these internal fucking desires and impulses and cravings, because they're there, right? We're all human. I hope you're human if you listen to this podcast. I don't know if there's a fucking animal listening to this. But no, we're all human, and we all have this experience internally of, we all have our desires. We all have our, cravings and impulses and these sort of driving factors that are driving us towards certain things that may not be the best for us. We all have these, and no one is exemplary from these. No one is someone who isn't going to ever experience this. The best person on earth, the best coaches, the best people in society, they still experience the driving factors and the inner urges to do shit that they know isn't good. Anyone who says they don't is absolutely fucking just bullshitting you. Just get real, right? We all have these things, and the difference between those who, actually become a really good person that they respect and they show up in society in a really good way, and those who just become a self-loathing fucking detriment to themselves and don't contribute anything to society, is the fact that the person who is actually doing something with themselves, they resist these urges and they understand that it opposes their rules and they need to stick to their rules. Okay. Now, as time goes on, a lot of people will lose respect for themselves if they don't have rules. Okay. So if you just live a life of hedonism and instant gratification and compulsiveness, eventually you start to look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, deep down, you're not living in a optimized way. Deep down, you're sort of doing shit that's destroying you. You're doing stuff that's just holding you back. You know it deep down. Now, a lot of people won't admit this to themselves because denial is a coping mechanism, and it's easier to lie to ourselves than to face ourselves in truth. But when we do face ourselves in truth, we have the power to change things. So if it's the very first step you do today, look at yourself in the mirror. Literally pause this episode after I say this. Look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what am I doing in my life that is causing a detriment to my progression, to my ascension, to my expansion, and to my personal evolution? What am I doing to hold myself back? Pause the episode and go do that. Now, if you did that, there were probably some things that came up. Now, what I want you to do is take action on that. You know what's holding you back. You need to start setting some rules around these things. Whatever it is that's holding you back, you need to start setting some rules around doing it way less frequently or not at all. I probably suggest starting off with way less frequency and then cutting it off altogether later on. But start to build up that momentum in terms of breaking the addiction, breaking the pattern. Because it's like a habitual cycle at this point, whatever it is, especially if you're doing it lots and lots, it's going to be a very strong pattern. Not to get all Andrew Huberman on you, but the neural pathways in your mind are very strong. The connections are deep. And so these habits are really, they have a lot of power over you at this point. So to cut it off completely cold turkey, you can if you want, challenge yourself, by all means, go for it. But that approach, you're more than likely, and I'm not saying this because I doubt you or anything like that, but just through experience and working with clients for a long period of time, you're more than likely going to experience internal rebellion, which will lead to relapse. You need to sort of like ease yourself out of a pattern. But yeah, you can do both approaches. Try whatever works for you. Any effort is better than no effort. Okay, now I want to mention this. When you set your rules, you got to stick to them. Whatever you say you're going to do, make sure you do it. Because if you don't, you're just going to, again, you're going to make yourself feel shit. Like whatever rules you set, make sure they're not fucking impossible to achieve. Otherwise, it's going to lead to self-loathing, lack of self-respect, lack of self-trust, and like a feeling almost of shame. You know, feeling like you're not capable of doing what you say you're going to do. It's going to erode your integrity. All right. Now, when we set these rules and when we are imposing this structure on ourselves, we stick to it. We stay true to our word. And when we do this, our self-respect is going to climb, and it's going to climb, and it's going to climb, and it's going to climb slowly at first, but eventually you're going to start to build up some momentum in yourself, and you're going to start looking at yourself in the mirror and being like, bro, you are the fucking man. You are the woman, right? Whatever gender you are listening to this, you are that person. Like, you are a fucking weapon. You stick to your word. You say what you're going to do, and you start to build this level of self-trust and self-respect, and you start feeling like, what I say I do, I'm going to do. And you feel confident in your word, and you feel like you're the fucking shit. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, you start to build up this level of power, personal power within yourself, just from abiding by the rules you set. So that's the natural byproduct of setting rules. All right. And, you know, obviously, as we mentioned before, when you set rules, you're going to get closer and closer to your ideal self in life. But a byproduct of that, a byproduct of sticking to that process, is the fact that you're going to experience some massive positive internal shifts. Now, on the opposite end of that, if you don't stick to the rules you set, or if you don't have rules in general, you're going to feel, again, like I said, lack of self-respect, lack of self-trust, everything I just mentioned, the opposite. Like, you're literally going to experience the opposite end of the spectrum. Self-loathing, shame, this, a bad internal experience. Now, when you have this negative internal experience, a lot of the time what can happen is you're going to experience like this void. All right, there's numbness inside almost. Like, all these feelings of like negative emotions are going to be there because you know you're not living to your potential. You know you're not abiding by your rules, or you don't even have fucking rules. Now, if someone doesn't have emotional intelligence, or someone doesn't, you know, everyone's got emotional intelligence to a degree, but if someone doesn't have a high level of emotional intelligence, oftentimes when they experience negative emotions like shame, guilt, self-loathing, you know, regret, all these sorts of things, they don't know how to deal with this, and so they're going to try and do this thing which is called a mood alteration, and they're going to engage in like self-destructive habits often, which give them like a temporary relief from the emotion. They're essentially trying to change their mood because they haven't been doing what they say they're going to do. They feel like shit for it, so they're trying to change their mood and feel better. But a lot of the time they're doing it through a means that is going to make them feel shit again in the long term. So this is literally the pattern. Feel shit about yourself because you haven't done what you say you're going to do and you're not living up to your potential. Start engaging in a self-destructive habit because you want to change your mood and how you're feeling internally. Receive a temporary relief from the initial emotion and feel good for a very brief period of time from the self-destructive pattern, whatever it is, drinking, drugs, porn, gambling, gaming, smoking, social media, whatever. After that's done and that sort of very brief temporal high wears off, you then experience not only the initial emotion, which was there initially, but now that initial emotion is there and it's stronger because you've resisted it, plus you now have shame from doing the self-destructive behavior as well. And now you're at the start of the loop again and it repeats. So you go back to the self-destructive behavior. You go back to trying to chase that high, trying to change that mood. And this cycle perpetuates and it continues until you actually break the pattern. So this is why it's important to have the rules in the first place, full circle moment, right? Have the rules in the first place so you don't get caught in that cycle. So you can stay the fuck away from that perpetual cycle of self-loathing and suffering. Like, honestly, I know how dramatic that sounds, but it's literally the case. Like, we can dramatically improve our life experience just by setting rules for ourselves and sticking to those rules. Structure, order, just discipline. These things are beautiful parts of life. And when you incorporate them into your own experience, you are going to experience life on a much better level. you're going to experience life on a much better frequency and energetic field, because you're not going to be carrying around shame and guilt and regret and anger towards self and sadness, and you're not going to be carrying that shit around. You're genuinely going to be like, I am the man. I feel good about myself. I do what I say I'm going to do. I'm living in alignment with the goals that I have and the person that I want to become. That is a life that I think we all should strive for. Okay, regardless of what your rules are, set your rules so you achieve that outcome where you respect, love, and care about yourself. Like, that is where we all want to be. Okay. Now, if you're in that place, right? If you're in this like void, if you're in this like perpetual cycle of fucking suffering, right? Self-imposed suffering, I'm going to say it is your fault. Take accountability. Okay. Let go of any victim mentality fucking shit you have. And I know that can be hard sometimes, because it's almost convenient to be in the victim's mentality. It's not my fault, it's their fault, right? But no, part of it's your fault. And I might be triggering some people with what I just said, but this is why I say to people, get out of the victim's mentality. I have this example I use in my coaching calls. Now, if you're watching the video of this podcast, you can see what I'm doing, but if not, I'm sure you'll be able to get the gist. So wherever you point the finger, the power goes. Okay, so if I experience something, let's say I have no... What example are we going to use? Let's say I have no fucking energy. Okay? Let's say I have no physical energy. I'm always tired. Now, if I say to someone, I'm fucking always tired, but it's not my fault. Netflix released a new episode last night and I had to watch it. I had to watch it. And then it's like, oh, it's not my fault. I got kept up all night from fucking social media. People kept messaging me. It's their fault. Or it's not my fault. I had to work fucking 10 hours yesterday and my boss made me do it. It's their fault. It's like everywhere you're pointing the power, the power goes. If you just turn that finger around and say, yep, it's my fault that I'm tired. It's my fault that I don't have energy. I'm the one who didn't go to sleep on time. I'm the one who ate those unhealthy fucking foods. I'm the one who stayed up late watching the bullshit Netflix episode, right? I'm the one who was, showing up in a way that isn't optimized for my own energy. When you take that accountability, when you take that responsibility for your actions, for whatever it is you're experiencing, you gain way more power over it in comparison to blaming other people. Don't play the blame game. It strips you of your personal power. Okay, now, coming back to what we're talking about, if you are in this void of self-suffering, self-imposed and self-created suffering, there's a way out. But firstly, you need to start with self-truth. Look yourself in the mirror, address what you're doing, address what's holding you back. Be fucking truthful with yourself. Do not lie to yourself. If you lie to yourself and you want to stay in a state of delusion and denial, you may as well turn this podcast episode off right now, because you're not going to get anything from it. But if you're willing to actually face yourself in truth and be honest with yourself, you will get a lot out of this. First thing, face yourself in self-truth. After you face yourself in self-truth and you become aware of what you need to change, you need to take action. After you take action, you need to systemize and structure this action. So let's say you're out of shape. You look at yourself in the mirror, you see you're out of shape. You're honest with yourself. Okay, the action then is go to the gym, but not just once. You need to create a structure around it. You're going to go to the gym, let's say 3 to 5 times a week. And you're going to create a rule saying, I'm going to go to the gym 3 to 5 times a week, no matter what. Then you stick by that rule. And that's where discipline and consistency comes in. Now, one thing I would recommend through this process is accountability. It's going to be the key to your success. Create accountability systems with yourself. Get accountability partners. Get around people who actually want to see you win and they'll hold you accountable to the process. Now, if you have someone in your life who can do that for you, whether it's your partner, a friend, something like that, do it. Set it up with them, an accountability system. If not, I do run a men's self-development community. This is for the men only, so to the women if you're listening to this. But I run a men's self-development community, and within this community, obviously we have our weekly calls, our education segments, our embodiment and actual practices that we do to, level up. But we also, a key feature we provide is accountability, both group and individually. So every single week you get a new accountability partner, one-on-one, and they hold you accountable to what you say you're going to do. So it makes the process a lot easier. If you're interested in that, just reach out to me on my Instagram, which is Ricky Gorsey, and just DM me the abbreviation SMS to represent Self-Mastery Society, so I know exactly what you're referring to. Now, if you enforce these rules upon yourself, and if you stick to them, and if you stay consistent, I can guarantee you that your life will improve. This isn't just like oh, it might work or it might not work. This is a literal guarantee. Like, you stick to the rules you set that are in alignment with the person you want to become and the life you want to live, and you will inevitably achieve your personal definition of success. But you have to stick to them. As I said, that's when the accountability comes in. That's when the actual responsibility to take action over a consistently long period of time comes into play. You need to take that action. You need to stick to the rules. It's fun to set them. It's fun to set rules, right? Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm too deep into self-development, but I find it like enjoyable to set rules for yourself, like to impose that structure on yourself. It's easy to do that. It's not so easy to actually stick to the rules themselves. That's when you need to include accountability, whether it's through yourself. If that's enough, it more than likely isn't, because with accountability to self, no one knows but you. Meaning you can fuck up 20 days in a row and no one will know. So there's no real accountability there, is there? There's no real like consequence, right? A big part of accountability is consequence, not in some tyrannical or like negative way, like, oh, you didn't do this, you're in fucking trouble. No, more so in the fact of like, we're social creatures. So the best accountability works when it's tied to other people that we respect. So it's like, I don't want to let this person down by not doing this thing. And that's a big part of how accountability works. So find some form of accountability through yourself. Probably wouldn't recommend that. Through other people, would highly recommend that. Again, if you need a bit of accountability, if you need and want to actually become the absolute best version of yourself, and you're actually driven to do so, my community may be a good option. Or if you're super intense and you're ready to fucking really smash everything, then one-on-one coaching may be better. Again, feel free to reach out to me with that and just DM me 1-to-1. But yeah, guys, I hope you got a lot of value from this episode. And I just want to leave with one question. That is, what rules do you need to set upon yourself to prevent yourself from falling into the void of self-destruction and self-imposed suffering? Or if you're already there, which I hope you're not, but if you are, what rules do you need to set and stick to get out of it? Thank you guys for listening. If you're interested in working with me in a one-on-one or a group setting, feel free to just DM me on Instagram. But other than that, I am glad you guys are listening and I hope you got a ton of value. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you guys. You.